What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another Dragonflight video. Hope you're all doing very well. Listen, I got some stuff I want to say. I got some stuff I want to say. To you Ret Paladin Palarinos, all you Ret Paladin boys and girls out there, we are going to talk about the state of this spec right now, the state of Paladin in general, but it's going to be about Ret Paladin primarily. I want to talk about constructive feedback versus detrimental feedback within the Paladin sort of community over the years. I want to talk about what Ret Paladin is actually gaining / losing as we move into Dragonflight, because I think it's really important to talk about that. And then I'm going to offer some solutions that I think Blizzard could implement to try and fix some of the problems that currently exist with Ret Paladin. And of course, there are lots of them. And let me just say, I did a video on Ret Paladin, of course, Bring Down the Hammer. This was a few days ago. And I got lots of comments from you guys. And one of them was, I was actually just texting with, is it Najimba? Nijimba? I think it's Nijimba. Sorry if I butchered that. But I started reading this comment, and then I saw the ... and I think, oh, I got to click read more, and then it was like, me. And I was like, oh my God, there's so much here that this person is so passionate about that they would write this much on a YouTube comment. And I got to read some of it. I haven't read all of it yet, because I just realized that, like, these are the kinds of people that exist, you know, within the Ret Paladin community, in the Ret Paladin Discord, right? I think that the Hammer of Wrath won there. I think that, like, what I want to start off by talking about is that this kind of feedback that you're seeing right here, this is actually good. It's a little bit long. It's a little bit of a novel, for sure. This could probably be put into a book and you could, like, sell it. So maybe just condense it a little bit. But this is the kind of feedback that you want to see out of a community. And this is the kind of feedback that Blizzard will actually respond to. And not feedback that's just like, Blizzard, I hate your guts. You haven't changed my spec in 5 years. You suck. I'm quitting World of Warcraft. And I think that that is that is another enormous part of lots of communities, but in particular, the Ret Paladin community. It's kind of known, the Discord and the forums, it's known for being toxic. And whether or not that's actually true, I think it is true to a point. But the problem is that those are the voices that get heard, and the voices like this don't get heard. This is a very concise, very well thought out, very well written response to my video, basically saying that Ret Paladin is doing pretty well right now, and I actually stand by that. I think Ret Paladin is doing well damage-wise. It's actually fine. But Nijimba brings up some really, really good points here about consecration in PvP, some frustrations that way. Things like Wings isn't still not working properly, utility and how it plays into PvE, and how, you know, Ret's lost a bunch of utility and compared to Prot versus Holy, you know, etc. Right? All the same discussions we've been having. But this is very, very good. This is exactly what we need to bring to Blizzard. So if you're somebody who, like, is passionate about Ret Paladin, and you've been frustrated that over the past 3 to 5 years you've seen very slow amounts of iteration, bordering on no iteration, and you've seen them take away mobility or take away utility over the years, then you need to get into the forums for Blizzard, get into the Discords, and write comments like this. Maybe not this long, once again, but make sure that you're giving concise points, precise ideas about what you want to see changed. A core issue with consecration is that whether it's PvP or Mythic Plus, I actually disagree. I think it's good in Mythic Plus. But let's say that in PvP, highly likely that targets will not stay in the same place. This is something that was brought up on the first day of the Talent Trees drop. Much of their feedback was coming simple issues. Here we go. I read that much of their feedback, and many of them were coming up with the same simple solution: have consecration move with the Paladin. There you go. So Najimba is explaining an issue that they believe is a real problem, and then they've immediately given Blizzard a solution. And sure, maybe this is obvious. It's something Blizzard could have thought of on their own. I get what you're saying there. But my first point here that I'm making is that if we're going to give Blizzard feedback, it must come in the form that looks something like this, where you have very set points that you want to make. This is my problem. Here's how you fix it. This is the problem. Here's how you fix it. Don't just say, this game sucks. You haven't changed my spec in 10 years. It doesn't help anybody. It certainly doesn't help us. It doesn't help Paladins. If you want Paladins to truly get better, come up with better feedback. That's my first point. This Ret Paladin critical review was just dropped by Bolus, and it's very good if you want to read through it. They kind of take like a neutral approach to everything, and to put it bluntly, he says that Ret Paladin is not in a great place, as we all know. And then he makes a very good disclaimer here. I think it's a him. I'm not actually sure. It could be a female. Before we get into the details, I want to take a moment to talk about what this article isn't about. Firstly, it's not about whether or not Ret will be a good spec in Dragonflight. A poorly designed spec can still be tuned strong, and a well-designed spec can be undertuned. It could well be that Ret is stuck with an incredibly boring singular talent build for the whole first tier and still do enough damage to be decent. But this doesn't mean that it justifies the poor talent design. Secondly, I've seen lots of comments on the feedback forums and elsewhere insulting the developers for the talents. This should go without saying, but those kinds of comments are not acceptable anywhere, and all criticism in this article, the article that they're writing, is directed towards the systems themselves. This was just sort of what I'm trying to echo right now, is to say, like, if you're going to give feedback to Blizzard, make it good. Don't just say that. Don't just insult the developers for the talents that they're making, okay? Even if you think they're really bad, it doesn't matter. Your emotions that you bring to this discussion need to be tempered a little bit, even though your emotions might be fair. You might be actually kind of justified in being angry with Blizzard for how they've treated Ret Paladin over the years. It doesn't matter. If you want real change to happen, you got to be careful with how you approach that stuff, okay? So again, point number one. Point number two, I kind of wanted to dive into, like, what has Ret Paladin actually lost or gained? And I think this is a really important thing to just, like, think about, because where's my mouse? I can't even see where it is. Oh, here it is. Because there we go. I can't do this. There we go. Ret Paladin right now in Shadowlands, I just want to make sure we're very clear about things that we actually have lost versus things we haven't actually lost. So I heard a lot of people say we've lost utility, we've lost mobility, and we've, damage has been okay, but we definitely lost, like, mobility and utility. And I think he mentions it in this article, and that is definitely true. You can see we are missing. He has a very good part of it right here. No, let me go down a little further. Here we go. What needs to change? Certainly buff their defenses. Expurgation, these are all just number tweaks. Mobility. In Shadowlands, you have 2 charges of Divine Steed, and you get a 6.3 second duration. You also get Echoing Blessings, which gives you 11% increased speed on when you cast Blessing of Freedom. In Dragonflight, you have 2 charges of Divine Steed for a 4-second duration. So I agree. Mobility is lower than it was in Shadowlands, and I'm going to offer some solutions on how to fix that. In Dragonflight, you have Divine Shield and either Shield of Vengeance or Divine Protection, but the Divine Protection is a 2-minute cooldown, I believe. Let me look at it right here. Oh, this is Prot. Who brought up Prot? What's going on here? Ret Paladin. This is a... oh, it is a 1-minute cooldown on Divine Protection, but you don't get the offensive portion of Shield of Vengeance, which is, like, probably the best part of it, right? Is that, like, obviously it creates a barrier, which is great, but then it does damage, and that's what you want. So this is not good. It's not good to have to choose between those two, okay? So we're losing that stuff for sure. However, I just want to remind everybody that we're gaining a lot of things in terms of what we had in Shadowlands versus what we get now. In Dragonflight, you can get Blinding Light or Repentance, and you can get Fist of Justice. Okay, it's right up here. You can get Blinding Light or Repentance, and you can get Fist of Justice, which is over here. So you're getting more CC. You just straight up are getting more crowd control, for Mythic Plus or for PvP mostly. So that's a bonus for Dragonflight. This is the huge row right here, guys. This is pretty crazy. You get, in Dragonflight, you get Cavalier, you get Eye for an Eye, and you get Unbreakable Spirit. Okay? Cavalier is right here. Eye for an Eye is down here in the spec side. You can pick Eye for an Eye if you want to. I'm not saying you're ever going to, but maybe you would if you're in PvP, right? So you get Cavalier, you get Eye for an Eye, and you get Unbreakable Spirit. This is pretty insane, honestly, in terms of what we're gaining in Dragonflight for Ret Paladin. You're getting cooldown reduction on your most important defensive abilities. You're getting mobility in the form of 2 charges of Divine Steed. And you're getting Eye for an Eye, which is more physical damage reduction, which is going to be insanely good in PvP. So, like, this row to me screams that you're gaining more in all 3 of these kind of... You could only pick one of these in Shadowlands. You get all 3 of them in Dragonflight. Yes, I understand the mobility thing where you get the Blessing of Freedom stuff. I'm just talking strictly like talent to talent, point to point, right? We're gaining something there. Okay. On top of that, the last one is healing. You can get Justicar's Vengeance or Healing Hands and Selfless Healer in Dragonflight. You've got Justicar's Vengeance, Eye for an Eye, and then where is Selfless? Selfless. There it is right there. You got Selfless Healer right here. Or Healing Hands, sorry. So you get to choose, right? Selfless Healer or Healing Hands. And then you can choose Justicar's Vengeance if you want to, or choose Eye for an Eye. But the point is you get some extra... You do get some extra utility there, some extra healing, which is nice. It's not the end of the world. It's not going to break the game. I just want to make sure that we're always aware when we sort of... There's some people who just sort of are screaming that, you know, we've lost all this stuff. And in reality, we've actually gained a lot of stuff as well because of the way the talents are distributed now with this new talent tree system. And I hope that kind of makes sense the way that I've explained that. Okay? So, what are the major problems, though? Once again, I have highlighted them, but we're going to go over them just one more time. In the class tree here, in particular, this is a terrible set of nodes right here, right? Cavalier, or Divine Seed's great. Into Cavalier is great. Into this node, Seasoned Warhorse or Seal of the Templar, just not really that good at all. This is just really bad. Blessing of Freedom is here, but we don't get the movement speed that we're used to in Shadowlands now. So that's bad. What else is bad? Some of the pathing stuff is very bad. You get, you have to take Fist of Justice and Greater Judgment just to get down to Rebuke. And then you have to take, you know, Turn Evil is the easiest way to kind of move through this section of the tree. I'm not even sure why Turn Evil is here. This should just be a baseline ability, and I'm going to show you in my changes that I'm going to make it a baseline ability. I'm going to show you that in a minute. On top of that, our utility got snuffed because we lost Blessing of Spell Warding, which is like a huge, huge problem, in my opinion, for Ret Paladin. They should have maintained Blessing of Spell Warding, and it could have been a choice node with Blessing of Protection. You can bring that into a raid, and you can have amazing utility in a raid boss fight. Blessing of Sacrifice is actually in a really good place because you can get the cooldown reduction in a raid. That's very, very good. All the healing stuff over here on the left side is actually quite strong, in my opinion. Let's make this really big. We'll zoom in a little bit. There we go. That stuff's all good. Okay? Now, going down here even further, it's brutal. Incandescence and Touch of Light, they don't really do anything. I've tried them in AoE situations. They basically don't do any damage. So they're basically useless, which is very frustrating. This middle section of the tree is actually okay. Divine Purpose is really good, but nobody's ever going to take Holy Avenger. So maybe just move that out of the way. Haste is good. Mastery is good. And then Sanctify Wrath is good, except that it's not working with Crusade right now. So once they fix that, it will be very, very good. And then Seraphim is kind of stranded because it's just not really... I don't think you're ever going to take Seraphim if you can get Sanctify Wrath. The Hammer of Wrath stuff at the bottom here is all fine. What we're mostly frustrated with is that we're missing some utility in both Mythic Plus and Raid. We're missing raid buffs, just straight up raid buffs in terms of Blessing of Spell Warding. And... we're missing mobility, a large amount of mobility. Obviously, on the defensive side for Ret Paladin, it's not very good either. But I'm not going to fix that today. I'm gonna mostly talk about mobility, utility in Mythic Plus and Raid, and we're gonna talk about raid buffs that you can bring. And I'm gonna try and show you some solutions for how to solve some of that stuff. So let's get into that right now. Here's a bunch of stuff that I've worked on. Here's a class tree that I've kind of worked on. And we're going to talk about it right now. So, let me bring up what these actually are. We'll make this very, very small so that we can see it. And it'll all kind of fit in very nicely there. I can actually make this even smaller. There we go. Look at that. Even better. Bum, bum, bum. Perfect. Put that there. Sorry, guys. I should have had this all ready to go. But you know how it is. You know how it is. We're doing it live. Then on top of that, I want to grab this guy right here. We're going to bring this over here. We'll put it right there. Make it a little bit bigger so that we can see everything. Okay. See that? Good. Now, let me move this over a little bit. Oh, those are gone now. No, I knew that was going to happen. Okay. So we're going to get these up. There's a couple of abilities that I want to talk about. So first of all, the structure of this tree here. We've got Blessing of Freedom. You're coming down to Retribution Aura, or the different offensive auras, basically. And then in the regular one, you've got, let me pull it up on my other screen. In the regular talent tree, you've got the Fist of Justice stuff. Let's just move this over here so you can see it. Okay. So this is what it looks like. Normally, you're going to have the Fist of Justice down to Greater Judgment. So I've moved stuff around. I brought Rebuke up. Okay. So Rebuke is up here now. It's not in the second row. We're putting a new Blessing here, and we're moving Hand of Hindrance from the Spec tree, right? So Hand of Hindrance was down here, and it was blocking the gateway to the bottom section of the tree. This is the final thing we're going to talk about later, is changing up the talents that are blocking the way to the final section, because they're just really frustrating and useless, and I don't want to take Hand of Hindrance in order to get into my, Divine Toll and stuff. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but we're going to move Hand of Hindrance from the Spec tree over to the class tree. It's going to go up in this corner right up here, and it's going to share a node with Fist of Justice. So we're moving everything over. Fist of Justice, Hand of Hindrance is over here. It connects with Hammer of Wrath. Or you can go straight down to this new Blessing of Sanctuary, which I'm going to bring right here. So you can see now we've got Blessing of Sanctuary right here. And this is going to do, this is the PvP talent. I've moved essentially a bunch of PvP talents into the regular tree for Ret Paladin. And you'd have to obviously replace them with some other PvP talents. I don't know how you deal with that. But the point is, these are very, very good abilities, and they're bringing you utility. So Blessing of Sanctuary right here instantly removes all stun, silence, fear, and horror effects from a friendly target and reduces the duration in future use. That's a 45-second cooldown. I think this is perfectly fine to throw in the top part of the tree as an additional idea if you want to take it. It's probably got really good utility in Mythic Plus, and of course it's very, very good in PvP. So I'm not sure how you would balance it for PvP. Maybe you just leave it the way it is. But the point is, this would be very, very good addition to Mythic Plus, having this amazing utility that you can now bring as a Ret Paladin. It goes for any Paladin, but you can bring it as a Ret Paladin to your group, and you can remove stun, silence, fear, and horror effects. Very, very cool. Okay, so that's a start there. On top of that, Blessing of Freedom is up here, and instead of having these stupid choices underneath Divine Steed, which was Seasoned Warhorse and Seal of the Templar, we're just going to replace it with Unbound Freedom, which I've modified it a little bit. It now says Blessing of Freedom increases your movement speed by 15%, and you gain Blessing of Freedom when you cast it on another target. So this is the mobility that we're looking for. You can get 2 charges of Divine Steed if you want with Cavalier, and you can get Unbound Freedom if you want to do that. You can have crazy mobility. You have 2 steeds, plus you get double freedom. You freedom somebody else, and you get freedomed yourself, and you get 15% movement speed. I think that that's a perfectly fine place to put that. We have replaced Turn Evil, by the way, which used to be here. Turn Evil was down here, and I moved it up, and now I've just completely gotten rid of Turn Evil. Turn Evil would just go baseline. I don't know why it needs to be in the tree at all. It's so incredibly useless, except for a couple of specific scenarios. So Turn Evil is just going to go baseline into the tree, okay? Now, replacing where Turn Evil was, we're bringing over this node right here from the Spec tree, Consecrated Ground and Sanctified Ground. Why are we bringing this over? Well, it provides more utility for you once again. You can have Consecration being larger and Consecration reducing enemy movement speed, which is going to help tanks when they need to kite away from mobs. You can have your Consecration down, just slowing movement speed. It's exactly like Death and Decay, basically, for Death Knight, except Death and Decay is like, the Death and Decay slow is like 90%. Or you can have your Consecration be larger, and then you can't be slowed. So you can have self-buffs. You can either do enemy debuffs for your team so that your tank can kite away, or you can buff yourself so that you can't be slowed, which helps your mobility once again. Okay? You can't be slowed, so you can stay in tune with your enemies. So that's the first part there. I would put this Blessing of Freedom buff as more mobility. I would put this Blessing of Sanctuary buff as a team-wide utility, and then I put both the Consecration buffs over here for more either slowing enemies down or keeping yourself at a steady pace so that you can't be slowed. And then Rebuke is going to move up here, and Hindrance and Fists are going to share a they're going to share a node. Oh, whatever. I'll just minimize this. Share a node up here. So if you want to go get the CC with Fists, you can go get it. But if you wanted more direct path down here, you can take it. Okay? Forget about this arrow. Don't worry about this arrow. This all travels down, of course. Okay. Moving forward, let's get down to the more utility now. Now, we can take the Blessing of Protection or Blessing of Spell Warding option. Make that down here, and then this node underneath it is still going to reduce the cooldown of Bop. Sorry, it's up here. By 60 seconds, or it will reduce the cooldown of Blessing of Spell Warding by 60 seconds. It would do just for either one of them, okay? So you can take this now. Now, we have this brand new utility that I'm going to bring... sorry, this goes here. Let's bring this over here now. Okay? So now we are replacing the Incandescence and Touch of Light kind of throughput nodes that were completely useless, literally they don't do any damage at all. So we're going to get rid of them, and we're going to replace them right here with Judgment of the Wise and Blessing of Replenishment. I've sort of changed the name on Blessing of Replenishment. I've just made up a new blessing there, but I am keeping the same effect. Here's what they're doing. Judgment of the Wise, if you choose it, it says casting Judgment grants 4 allied healers within 40 yards 1% of their maximum mana. Can only occur once every 15 seconds. So if you press Divine Toll, if you press Judgment, it will trigger this effect. You can't get both. You're just going to only get one of them. But it's every 15 seconds. So I did the math on this. If you have a 4-minute fight, let's go to the calculator. A 4-minute fight times 60 seconds. Okay, that's 240 seconds. We're going to divide that by 15. So every 15, so if you do this on cooldown, every 15 seconds you throw a Judgment, you're going to give 4 healers 16% of their mana back. So that's over the course of an entire fight. And that's like with perfect optimal uptime. You can tweak these numbers too. This is tweakable. If that sounds like too much mana to be giving your healers, it probably is, then just tweak it. Make it only occur once every 20 seconds. Let's do the math on that. 60 times 4 divided by 20. Now you're only giving them 12% of their mana back. See how easy that is? It's very easy to tweak. If it's too powerful, just knock it down a little bit, but still make it so that it's good. So that's the first one, Judgment of the Wise. You can take this. This is raid-wide healing utility. You're giving healers mana. Very cool. Okay? The other one, the other choice you can make is Blessing of Replenishment. Bless one friendly target, reducing their damage taken by 3% and increasing their stamina by 3%. This is from Wrath of the Lich King, by the way. For 10 minutes. So this is like a full fight buff. They get 3% less damage taken, 3% stamina. When they block, dodge, or parry, you get 5% less damage taken for 3 seconds. So again, this could be tweaked a little bit. You can buff it or nerf it, whatever you want. But you put this on your tank. You bless one of the tanks in the raid, let's say, or you do it in Mythic Plus. Bless the tank in Mythic Plus, and you're going to give him more damage reduction, more stamina, and whenever he blocks, dodges, or parries, which basically every tank does one of those things, you're going to get less damage taken, which is really great. Just less damage taken almost all the time, periodically, because they're probably going to be blocking, dodging, and parrying quite a bit, especially in Mythic Plus. So these are now 2 options down here. This is now the raid utility section. It's huge. You've got amazing raid utility here in Blessing of Spell Warding or Blessing of Protection, and then now Judgment of the Wise and Blessing of Replenishment. So I really like this idea of this class tree. Let me just summarize it really quickly. So your single target CC is going to go over here. You're now getting a new Blessing of Sanctuary here, which is a huge 45-second cooldown that you can just make one of your allies like immune to all CC, which is really, really nice. You're getting more mobility in Blessing of Freedom over here. You can bless an ally. You both get freedom, and you both get 15% movement speed. Really, really good. I love this idea here. You're getting Consecration buffs to slow your enemies or make yourself immune to being slowed, basically, be below 80% of your max speed. So that gives you more mobility, essentially. Helps you not be slowed so you can stay up on your enemies, which is really nice. Or you can slow enemies to help your tank kite away from monsters on really awful weeks of Mythic Plus. And then down here, of course, we have the raid utility I talked about. Judgment giving your healers mana. Blessing of Sanctuary, which makes a tank tankier. And then Blessing of Spell Warding. So you could just... Like, these are the kinds of things. This is the kind of flavor that I think Paladins are looking for. This is the kind of stuff that they used to have in past expansions, and they don't have anymore, which is really sad. So that's the class tree. That's just all the changes that I made to the class tree. I didn't really change anything else. I just think this would be more than enough. It might be overkill, but this is more than enough to start to fix the problems that exist for Ret Paladin. Let's look at one more tree here. This is the last thing I want to look at here. Here's the spec side of things. Just for Ret Paladin, the main problem we're dealing with here is this final gate at the bottom, okay? So at the very bottom gate here, when you have to get you get 10 extra points left. Guarding the gate is a bunch of awful, not awful, but frustrating utility things like Hand of Hindrance, for example. So we're going to replace that, and of course we had to replace our Consecration node that we got rid of. So here's what we're going to do. To replace the Consecration node, we're going to put Hallowed Ground, which is another PvP talent. Your Consecration clears and suppresses all snare effects on allies within its area of effect. What you could do for this, because that's extremely powerful, what you could do is make this have a cooldown. So it has a 15-second cooldown or something, so that it's not up all the time. Maybe make it a 20, 30-second cooldown. Whatever you want to do, you can tweak the number there and say that this effect has a 20 or 30-second cooldown. That will make it balanced, because that is an incredibly powerful effect. But it's great. Imagine a Ret Paladin. This is only for Ret Paladin. Now you can bring a Ret Paladin to your Mythic Plus group, and he can be clearing all of his allies of snare effects, which is so cool. That's such a like Paladin thing to do. You're helping out your team, but only Ret Paladin gets it. I think that would be kind of cool. On top of that, you could take Law and Order, which replaces Hand of Hindrance because it's now on the class side. When your Hand of Hindrance is dispelled or otherwise removed, its cooldown is reduced by 15 seconds. Don't really care about that. What we really care about is that Blade of Justice now applies Hand of Hindrance to multiple targets. I think it's 3 targets. It just says nearby targets, but you could cap it at like 3 targets. So this would be really, really cool for Ret Paladin. Blade of Justice now is going to slow enemies with Hand of Hindrance. So again, you can have Consecration on the ground slowing enemies. You can have Blade of Justice slowing enemies. This is really going to help your tank on those awful weeks where they need to kite away. It's going to be amazing for that. It's going to be awful for like Sanguine Week. Don't take this on Sanguine Week, but this is something that you could take primarily for your tank to help them with kiting or to help yourself with kiting, whatever you do. It helps you control monsters in Mythic Plus more easily, which is amazing. Really, really amazing. Finally, we have Jurisdiction. Increases the range of Blade of Justice, Hammer of Justice, and by 10 yards, and then the radius of Divine Storm by 4 yards. Again, you can tweak these numbers. Maybe make the radius of Divine Storm only 2 extra yards. Maybe make the range of Blade of Justice, Hammer of Justice only 5 extra yards. But the point of this talent is to give you increased range on your abilities, which kind of gives you a pseudo mobility boost. If you have to be away from a monster for a certain amount of time, think about like boss fights, for example, in this last season, season 4 of Shadowlands, when you ran into Sanctum of Domination. The very first boss is the Terragru. There's an intermission phase with the Terragru where you have to be away from him, and you have to go find that little white triangle on the ground and go stand in it. This would help you continue to deal damage from range. You can throw Judgment. You can hit them with Blade of Justice from a longer range than you already can now. This is the idea for this is to continue to give you uptime on a boss or a group of enemies while also having to respect the mechanics that are there. That's the idea there. So these are all the changes that I would make for the Ret Paladin spec tree, and the reason I would make them is, again, these are all guarding the way for helping you get down to the bottom part of your tree, and these are much more interesting ideas that I think you might want to actually pick up. They give you more utility, they give you the ability to have more throughput from range, and they can clear and suppress snare effects for your allies, more group buffs for your allies, which I think is really, really huge. So those are kind of my ideas, guys. And I did want to just make a video dedicated solely to talking about Ret Paladin here and the problems that it's had over the years, talking about how we can maybe have better constructive feedback, like I had on that YouTube comment, versus really destructive feedback, which is just yelling and screaming at the Blizzard devs, calling them stupid, because that doesn't help anybody at all. I also wanted to just highlight what I think we've actually gained in Dragonflight on the talent side of things. We've actually gained quite a bit there, and it's always good to keep that in the back of your mind. Remember that we are gaining a bunch, but there are still big problems with Ret Paladin for sure, and I tried to highlight how are we going to fix some of those problems on the spec side of things, of course, with Ret Paladin there, and then also on the class side here, which is mainly where all the buffs would come in, getting extra utility, getting extra buffs for your entire team, for your raid, slowing down enemies in Mythic Plus, whatever you want to do. It's a very Paladin thing. These are very Paladin ideas. You know, this is exactly why people want to pick Paladin sometimes. They want to be like that holy warrior, but they also want to help their team. You want to be hitting people with freedom. You want to do lay on hands. You want to have Devo aura going. You want to have consecration slowing enemies so they're safe. You want to have blessing of spell warding. You want to be hitting your guys and saving them while also beating down your enemies. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. This is a discussion. I really want this to be a video about Ret Paladin, and I want to discuss it in the comments, and I want us to try and actually get some constructive ideas rolling. What do you guys think are good talent choices to bring in to Ret Paladin to make it better? Don't just sit on the sidelines and complain that Ret Paladin is bad. Give me your solutions on how you would fix it. What are the problems? How would you fix them going forward? What does Blizzard need to do? Maybe they'll hear this feedback and they will actually make changes. There is some hope, and there is some precedent for this. Enhancement Shaman, for example, in Shadowlands, about halfway through Shadowlands, Enhancement Shaman finally got the ability to spread Lava Lash with Flame Shock. It's something we've been begging for years, and they finally did it. So there is precedent that Blizzard, I think, has been getting a little bit better at helping classes that really do need that help. Obviously, Ret Paladin's been on the back burner for a long time, but if we create some content here that provides constructive criticism to Blizzard, then maybe they'll start listening and they'll start providing those changes. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I love you all. I'll see you in the next one.